Happy New Year, everybody, and welcome to the soft relaunch of my channel. To kick off this relaunch, I'm gonna start simple and do what just about every other YouTuber is doing right now. Share with you a list of movies coming out in 2023, ranked by how excited I personally am for them. This list consists of the 21 movies that I, at the moment, plan on seeing this year. I might end up not seeing some of them, and I'm sure there will be at least 2 or 3 that aren't on my radar right now, but I will end up seeing. But for now, here's my list. Number 21, The Marvels. I don't have any reason to be actively dreading this movie, but I also don't know anywhere near enough about it to be excited for it yet. And this really should not have to be said, but I have absolutely nothing against Brie Larson herself. Any quote-unquote controversy surrounding her has been entirely manufactured. However, that doesn't change the fact that Captain Marvel is one of the MCU's most forgettable films, and Carol Danvers is one of its blandest protagonists. But hey, that's how I felt about Thor before Ragnarok came along, so I'm entirely open to a sequel that can get me more invested in this character. And remember, this isn't just a Captain Marvel movie, but also a Miss Marvel movie. And Miss Marvel was definitely one of the better MCU Disney Plus shows, though that's not a super high bar. But still, I'm looking forward to seeing these characters interact. Let's just hope that the movie they're in is actually interesting. 20. Shazam! Fury of the Gods. I'm trying really hard to maintain some level of excitement for DC's 2023 slate in spite of the fact that James Gunn is about to execute Order 66 on the entire DCEU as we know it. But to be honest, even if that wasn't the case, I'm not sure if this film would be ranked that much higher. I wouldn't quite say the first Shazam was amazing, but it was still a very fun time, and this one looks to be more of the same. And that's not such a bad thing, but it's also not something I'm exactly chomping at the bit to see. I do worry that this movie might feel a little overstuffed now that all of the kids are superheroes, and the writers are really gonna have to sell us on these villains as an actual convincing threat when they're up against 6 heroes with Superman-level powers. And if this really is the last we ever see of this version of Billy Batson, maybe that's for the best, since at this point, Asher Angel is probably too old to keep playing this character. 19. Dune Part 2. I wasn't quite as blown away by 2021's Dune as some others were. Visually, it was an incredible spectacle, no doubt about that. But from a story standpoint, it kind of felt like a lot of build-up and not much payoff. And I know that's not entirely fair since it very clearly was the first half of a 2-part story, but looking at Part 1 purely as its own entity, it was kind of the cinematic equivalent of eating your vegetables so that you could have dessert afterwards. But since Part 1 got most of the heavy lifting out of the way, that will presumably free up more time for Part 2 to dive way deeper into the characters and world that have been established, and deliver a faster-paced film that's at least a bit heavier on action and adventure. 18. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I don't have any nostalgia for the Indiana Jones franchise, and am honestly kinda shocked that this movie is actually happening after all these years. But I've seen the trailer a few times, and I think it looks pretty solid. I, like most, was pretty skeptical towards the idea of an 80-year-old Harrison Ford reprising his role. I mean, if you can recast Han Solo, I think you could also recast Indy, but I've gotta say, this has gotta be some of the most impressive de-aging effects to date. I'm looking forward to giving Dial of Destiny a watch, just as soon as I watch the other 4 movies first. 17. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. That took me like 5 takes to say. Like Indiana Jones, I have no nostalgic attachment to the Ninja Turtles, but the 2012 animated series ended up being one of my favorite Nickelodeon shows of all time. Like, quite possibly the best since Avatar. I've also seen several bits and pieces of Rise of the TMNT, as well as the movie, which I also loved. So I'm definitely looking forward to this next era of the franchise that Mutant Mayhem will usher in. We don't know much about it beyond some concept art and the fact that Seth Rogen is producing it, but based on the past decade of Ninja Turtles content, barring the Michael Bay movies, I think it's safe to say that this IP is in good hands. Just as long as they change Donnie's design, because... ew. 16. Elemental. Looks like Pixar's doing a rom-com, and you know what? I'm here for it. Now, 2022 was a pretty disappointing year for Pixar in my opinion. I thought Turning Red and Lightyear were okay, but they both fell pretty well below my expectations for them, especially Lightyear. And it's pretty upsetting to see that we've reached a point where so many people's default reaction to an upcoming Pixar movie is to be skeptical, but I still have faith in this studio. Sure, the premise of "Welcome to insert gimmick here, city" is kind of familiar, and I do wish that there was some more variety in the designs of all the elemental people. For instance, instead of all the earth people being made out of rock, maybe some could be made of sand or mud or lava. But I don't know. I've still got a good feeling about this one. I just think it has the potential to be a really cozy, wholesome movie about two opposites who learn to understand each other. Pixar may no longer be consistently putting out bangers like they were during the pre-Cars 2 days. But if Inside Out, Coco, Toy Story 4, and Soul are all anything to go by, they're still more than capable of making something exceptional. 15. Barbie. I'm as shocked as anybody that this movie is on my list at all, but I don't know. I saw the teaser trailer and became very intrigued. And I mean, look at the names attached to this movie. We've got Greta Gerwig directing, who did Lady Bird and Little Women, and it's being written by Noah Baumbach, sorry if I mispronounced that, director of the Meyerowitz Stories and Marriage Story. And yes, it's definitely not unheard of for a movie backed by this kind of talent to still bomb, but I've just got something of a gut feeling that we might be looking at another Lego movie situation, where everyone sees the concept and the first trailer and assumes it's going to be this horrendous cash grab, and then it comes out, it ends up being one of the funniest, smartest, most widely acclaimed movies of the entire year. We'll have to wait and see, but I am very, very curious to see more of this film. 14. Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. Between the Amber Heard shit show and looming DCEU reboot, this movie feels like more of a lame duck than ever, but if we can put all that aside, I still think it's going to be a good time. The first Aquaman was a ton of fun, and I'm expecting the same from this sequel. Just like with Zachary Levi's Shazam, if this really is the last we'll ever see of Jason Momoa's Aquaman, then hopefully he can at least go out with a bang. 13. Blue Beetle. I'm not super familiar with this character, but I did really like him in both Young Justice and the Injustice games, which I never actually played, but I did watch all the cutscenes and character interactions. So I'm more than open to him getting his own movie. Really not much else to say about this one, other than the costume looks really sick based on the leaked photo, and hey, it's a superhero movie with a Hispanic lead, and I'm always for more representation in this genre. 12. Wish. I know people have been pretty down on Disney lately, and believe me, I have no kind words to say about Disney the corporation, but Disney the animation studio, I still want to root for. And it's funny because they seem to be on such a hot streak throughout most of the 2010s, with pretty much all of their movies during this stretch of time ranging from good to fantastic. They were honestly more consistent than Pixar during this time. But in more recent years, it began to feel like they'd fallen into a slump. Frozen 2 and especially Ralph Breaks the Internet were two of the most disappointing sequels I'd seen in a long time, and I forgot about Raya and the Last Dragon pretty much as soon as I saw it. However, Encanto easily stands toe-to-toe with Disney's best films of the 2010s, and I was even pleasantly surprised by Strange World in spite of all the lukewarm buzz surrounding it. And I want to believe that they're putting everything they've got into Wish, since, after all, it coincides with their 100th anniversary. The premise seems to be based around the iconic wishing star that's been a part of the studio's branding for decades. It's pretty much the equivalent of DreamWorks making a movie about their Moon Boy mascot. I'm hoping Wish turns out to be another instant Disney classic, but at the very least, we can expect to see gorgeous animation and some great new songs. 11. Rebel Moon. This is another one we don't know that much about, but it's another Zack Snyder movie, and I like Zack Snyder. I know his movies aren't for everybody, but I personally think he has such an eye for larger-than-life spectacle mixed with raw human emotion, packaged in films that feel like graphic novel panels brought to life. And although I will always mourn the loss of Snyder's DC plans that Warner Bros. Kneecapped, I'm still happy to see that he's found a new home at Netflix. Army of the Dead was good, simple fun, but Rebel Moon is looking to have a lot more ambition and scale, especially since it's being shot back-to-back with a sequel. Plus, it's really nice to see Ray Fisher getting work after being dealt the rawest possible hand by WB. Also, screw that one article that called this movie a Star Wars ripoff before we've even gotten a single trailer. Like, you're allowed to not like Snyder's movies, but why does it feel like so many film pundits have a personal vendetta against the guy? 10. Nimona. Damn it, I almost had this list at an even 20, and then I remembered this is also coming out this year. Nimona was originally in development at Blue Sky before getting shit-canned by Disney once they bought out Fox and shut down that studio. Gee, I wonder why they did that. It's almost like this is part of a reoccurring pattern. But nah, I'm sure I'm just imagining things. But then Netflix, in a rare instance of them actually caring about animation, gave the movie a new life. The premise of a character being forced to team up with somebody he was initially trying to kill sounds super interesting. And the look of this movie seems to be in line with the trend of recent CG films prioritizing stylization over realism, which is just such a refreshing change of pace after how homogeneous mainline animated films have looked for the longest time. 9. Chicken Run: Dawn of the Nugget. Nobody seems to be talking about this one, and that's kind of a shame. I absolutely adore Aardman, and despite Chicken Run being their very first movie, it's probably still my favorite, so I was very excited when a sequel got announced a few years back. And I don't think anybody's gonna complain about Mel Gibson getting recast, but if it's actually true that Julia Sawalha Ginger's VA was recast solely because of her age, yeah, that's pretty messed up. But that aside, while some of Aardman's movies are definitely better than others, they've never put out anything close to a dud before, so I don't expect that to change now. 8. Creed 3. I guess it wasn't enough for Kang to beat the fuck out of Ant-Man this year, so he's about to do the same to Killmonger. The Creed films have done such a good job of breathing new life into the Rocky franchise. Sure, they're not much less formulaic than the original movies, but when they're this well made and well acted, it's really hard to care. Creed 3 is the directorial debut of Michael B. Jordan, and based on what we've seen so far, it looks like he's about to knock it out of the park. It is a shame that Sylvester Stallone isn't involved at all, still not really sure what happened there, but I've got a good feeling this film is in good hands. 7. John Wick Chapter 4. Every now and then, it's nice to take a break from superheroes and their sprawling extended universes, and have a straightforward, self-contained action movie that's more grounded and less reliant on special effects. And that's exactly what the John Wick series has delivered so far. All 3 of these movies feature some of the most well-choreographed, batshit insane practical action sequences I've ever seen. I mean, in the 3rd one, he kills somebody with a book. A book. And not only that, but there's also some pretty cool world building with this intricate underground society of assassins. And of course, Keanu Reeves himself is the true secret sauce of this franchise. This is the kind of role where he's just absolutely in his element, and I can't wait to see him back in action in Chapter 4. 6. The Flash. Take what I said about Aquaman being a lame duck, and apply it to this movie tenfold. But still, the CW Flash show, before it went to shit, really endeared me to Barry Allen as a character, and I've been eager to see this hero on the big screen with a proper budget. And that is something we did get a taste of in Justice League. Yes, the Justice League version of the Flash was an absolute joke, but I did really enjoy him in the Snyder Cut. And that Speed Force sequence is rivaled only by Man of Steel's first flight as the greatest scene in the entire DCEU. And just one of the greatest comic book movie scenes, period. Plus, even if it might be yet another instance of Hollywood's inability to leave an old franchise be, I can't say that I'm not excited for the return of Michael Keaton's Batman. Not only that, but we're also getting one last major appearance from Batfleck. I know he's supposed to have a cameo in Aquaman, but I honestly would not be surprised if that ends up getting cut. And on a similar note, I really hope the scrapped Henry Cavill cameo could be included in the deleted scenes. Like, they could at least give us that, right? 5. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. There's no denying that the MCU's 4th phase was by far its most rocky. While I still at least liked the majority of what came out during this phase, and I can certainly appreciate Marvel's willingness to play it less safe, some of those gambles really did not pay off. But the biggest problem with Phase 4 was a lack of any real narrative through line beyond the very broad themes of the multiverse and the aftermath of Endgame. But ever since Feige revealed the slate for Phases 5 and 6, I've been confident that the MCU is about to finally get back on track after 2 years of treading water. And it seems like they're putting a strong foot forward with Quantumania by establishing, right from the start, a clear overarching threat in the form of Kang the Conqueror, whose confrontation we'll spend the next several movies building towards. And he's being introduced in an Ant-Man movie of all things. I enjoyed the first 2 for how breezy and lighthearted they were, but it's cool to see this one take itself more seriously and have a much greater sense of stakes. but I still have no idea why Cassie got recast. 4. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Regardless of my feelings towards James Gunn as head of the DCEU, I've still thoroughly enjoyed every superhero project he's directed, from Guardians to the Suicide Squad to Peacemaker. Out of all the MCU franchises, Guardians of the Galaxy has always been the one that's best at balancing humor with emotion, and it looks like Gunn is really going for the feels this time with Volume 3. And after watching this trailer, I can safely say that there's no way in hell that all 7 Guardians make it out of this movie alive. My money's on Rocket. 3. Oppenheimer. I don't think it's a hot take at all to say that Christopher Nolan is one of the greatest directors of our time. I still haven't seen all his movies yet, which is something I will definitely remedy before this comes out. And I still can't believe that this meme about Nolan creating a nuclear explosion without CGI actually came true. But besides that, it seems like this is going to be his first film in a while that isn't very action heavy. But that's fine by me, since The Prestige was also that way, and it's one of my favorites. And it just brings me such immeasurable joy to see Josh freaking Peck in a Nolan movie alongside the likes of Robert Downey Jr. and Matt Damon. Like, our boy has made it, and I am so happy for him. 2. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. This one really needs no explanation. Into the Spider-Verse is tied with Spider-Man 2 as not just my favorite Spider-Man movie, but one of my favorite comic book movies ever. And Across the Spider-Verse is taking everything that made its predecessor great and turning it up to 11. The absolutely insane animation, the sublime action, the strong emotional core, and the truckloads of fan service. Seriously, it looks like every version of Spider-Man in existence is being crammed into this movie. And fingers crossed that PS4 Spider-Man and Spectacular Spider-Man have actual speaking roles and aren't just 2-second background cameos. God, that 8-month delay really did hurt because I absolutely cannot wait for this movie. As well as the inevitable post-credit scene that teases Tobey, Andrew, and Tom for 2024's Beyond the Spider-Verse. And finally, number 1, the Super Mario Bros. Movie. Never in a million years did I think I would put an Illumination movie at the top of a most anticipated list, but here we are, and I will not apologize for it. Now, I always wanted to hold out some hope, but I was still plenty skeptical when this film was first announced. But then we finally saw it, and against all odds, it looks like just about everything I could have wanted. This movie is bringing the world of Mario to life in a way I never knew was possible. Nearly every single frame of footage we've seen so far is stuffed with Easter eggs and references to games from across the series' entire history. Some of which are things that nobody other than die-hard fans would ever notice. My one and only gripe so far is that Yoshi deserves to be part of the core cast instead of just another side character. But that one personal nitpick aside, this movie is looking to be an absolute dream come true, and I am counting down the days until opening night. Now, there is a lot, and I mean a lot, more I have to say about the Super Mario Bros. Movie, but I'm gonna save that for my next video, so stay tuned.